It
Yay!
is Sunday, September 13th, 2020, 5:02 p.m. Smoke has enveloped the west coast of the United States, but not the study of our mystery guest, who is here without a single bee, at least not visible. Um,
We will probably move the camera.
I don't
uh,
know. The smoke. I would normally shoot this outside, but the conditions are not good out there.
so if
AQI of north of 150 still out here.
yeah,
Crazy.
um, so how does it affect the bees?
Um, so it's going to make it harder for them to communicate, as Kate mentioned. You smoke bees when you are trying to like work the hive. It kind of prevents them from communicating with pheromones, which is how they normally convey messages to each other. So I would imagine that,
So you censor them.
yeah, you're basically it's
It's
more
like
introducing.
content moderation.
It is.
Yeah, it's
Holy
more white
shit.
noise introduction. But yes, I am. I definitely you were trying to prevent bees from communicating, say, alarm that I'm getting into their homes. So
If I took more drugs, that would be a thesis for a book, like bees and content moderation and like the First Amendment. That all makes sense right now.
All right. Which brings us to the fact that we are not allowed to have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, Kate brought a mystery guest, a man of many bees, and a reporter. If memory serves, you're in Oakland.
He's at the Wall Street Journal.
Jeff
correct.
Horowitz works for the Wall Street Journal and is the only in lieu of fun guest in our illustrious history to show up to talk about content moderation and to, in fact, talk about bees for an hour. It was one of my very favorite episodes of the show. So, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so fun to see you.
Yeah, that's nice. It's been a while actually. I don't think I've seen you since in like a visual representation of you since the last time.
Yeah, I know. I don't think
Well,
so
that
either.
is always true.
That was sub 100. Sub big.
I haven't
Yeah,
seen you since the last time I saw you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
true.
it's an accurate
Things
thing.
are more like they are now than they've ever been before.
Uh,
All right. I'm leaving. That's it.
so no, but like we kind of well, it would be great to get kind of like an update on well, we had a super interesting guest this week, Carl Bergstrom, who is a an excellent photographer of crows and ravens, and kind of talked to us about that. And then we were talking about how obsessed we are with various types of corvids. But also, obviously, like we've kind of developed this weird fascination with bees. And then the murder hornet crisis kind of happened at the same moment that all of like the COVID stuff was happening. And I don't know, it just kind of became a running joke of like bees and murder hornets and like all of these types of things. But like seriously, like two questions. Like one is like this kind of if they don't bees don't have lungs, then does this like it, but you said it affects their ability to communicate. So what do they do in response to something like a forest fire?
Um, they will try to leave if they can. There's enough time for that. But I mean, it's not that they can't communicate. It's that it just is making it much harder for a signal to travel through a colony, right? Because you've got 20,000 bees. It takes a while for a message to get through, and so if you put smoke in there, it takes longer. But yeah, I don't think it's they seem like they're honestly more tolerant of it than people are, honestly.
And on the other hand, they are centrally managed, and if you presumably burn the hive, they're
One
they're
queen.
kind of
Yep.
toast, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, what do they do when the whole forest is or the whole brush is on fire?
If they were actually able to clear out in time, they would first eat as much honey as they possibly could to
Oh,
stockpile.
really? So like they eat
Yeah.
it all and then they take off?
They do their best to take everything they can with them. Yeah. So whenever there's a swarm, they'll always just relocate with the maximum amount of honey they can fit in their stomachs. And and they'll use that to start building comb. And
is that very much?
What's up?
Is that very much?
Yeah, about their body weight. They can double their body weight with that. So yeah, I think it's they can make it for at least a week or so.
And then they fly out in a swarm, and they're just looking for a new safe place. Is that?
Yeah, they'll tend to depart to like some, a branch somewhere fairly open, and then they'll just all kind of sit there in a ball while scouts go around and find a suitable place, whether that's a log, a cave, or
Is the ball like around the queen?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be it's not like she's always exactly in the center, but yeah.
You showed us a video of this.
Yeah.
Of them kind of hanging out on a branch.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still I don't understand. Maybe it's one of these things. I'm also trying to get into kind of wild mushroom identification and things like that. Bird identification is something I've been into for a very long time, my entire life. But one of the things that I find is I'm always kind of wondering, do people who I think I'm a very observant person. I've never in my life seen a wild swarm of bees. And I don't understand how you seem to have found, who have found or people have found you to tell you how to find them.
Oh, that's
on alternate Wednesdays.
That's the internet. Yeah. That's there's a group of local beekeepers, and alerts are provided. We did a removal, my wife and I, last night. By the way, she did the hairstyling.
She did a good job.
Yeah, I thought so.
We're going to talk about that in a moment. We're going to get to the hair. Because the hair is, Kate's hair is really different from the last time we were all together. My hair is exactly the same.
Oh,
except
yeah.
a little bit grayer.
We should talk about that.
We're going to swap hair notes, cowlick notes.
Ben, can I send you a video that I want you to play on YouTube that's about bees?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a really sad video, Jeff, not sad, but it was about a guy who had a really violent hive that was just weirdly violent, and he had to euthanize the queen, and how hard it was. And I was just kind of interested in your take on it. It was going viral a couple of weeks ago.
There is a saying, which is a mean queen is a dead queen. Sometimes it's worth giving them a few weeks just to see if they calm down. For certain times of year, they get cranky. There's not that much to eat anymore, and they just start getting a little bit more touchy about a whole bunch of things. But yeah, no, definitely if a hive is mean for a long period of time, you knock out the queen and replace her, and hopefully the mean bees cycle through. It takes about 6 weeks, and then you've got hopefully a new friendly hive.
So I have a really meta question. Do you think of hives as one organism, or do you think of them as do you think of a hive because I just think that it's so there seems to be a nucleus type of idea of having a queen. I don't know, that makes it seem like one cellular organism or something like that in a certain way, even though it's a community of individual things.
So if you were to think of them as a single organism, which is not unreasonable, they're actually a warm-blooded animal. They would run in the mid-90s for temperature year-round. That's what they need for incubating brood. So, and they kind of switch off, right? They're very selfless. Bees sting, and that's fatal to the bee. On the other hand, when the fall comes around, we're actually getting close to it now. They will all the male bees, known as drones, about 1 in 10 in the hive, will get dragged out of the hive to die because they're not useful over the winter, and all they're going to do is extra mouths to feed. So, bye-bye. And they don't like that. You can tell they don't like that. The male bees are not into this situation, but it's not as if everyone's selfless all the time, if that makes sense. But even if they are pretty good about it.
Ben, you have your oh wow
Goodbye, Ben.
Click to exit full
I'm
screen.
still here. I'm still here.
Okay, I see. I think he's going to try to show this video for us, which is of this euthanizing of this dangerous hive. It's so crazy because it's such a different video than what what we experienced with your hives, which were like they were so gentle.
Yeah.
Um,
I like the idea of euthanizing because basically you just crush her. That's it. You just pinch
is
her
that
head.
what you do? You just do it? Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no like. It's not like you put her to sleep. No.
I know that they're not bees, they're wasps, but I should shut up because we're gonna play the video. But I'll let Ben figure it out. But like until he yells at me to shut up. But there were bees, not wasps wasps, not bees that I found in my backyard. I was like, oh look, there's like some weird hole that like all of these where did that, like, it looks dug out. How could it possibly have got dug out? And then like it looked like it dug up an animal. And then I was like, oh God, there's like 50 yellow jackets flying in and out of it. And it was like, or like wasps of some kind. And I was like, oh yeah. And I was like, holy crap. Okay, I'm getting away from this thing. But I just I've been thinking a lot lately about all of this like kind of behavior. Also like why we hate wasps so much more than bees.
Well, they did. That's a pretty good reason. They eat meat, and so they're going to bother you at meals much more often than bees will, and they're also just total dicks.
Yeah, I kind of hate them. I've gotten a few wasp stings that are just absolutely, absolutely awful. Like right in the eye, like area, and then it like kind of like created like it went into the poison went into my lymph nodes, and I like had like a huge swollen thing. It was unpleasant. Ben, it's not super necessary to play this video.
Well, then why did you ask me to play it?
Well, I mean, like I want you to, but like, are you having problems or is it okay?
They do eat meat. They feed meat to their young because their young need protein. The adults mostly eat sugar.
I'm back.
But yeah, well, that was a good video.
Yeah.
I'm back, but I seem to be unable to hear anybody.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep. You're back.
I can't hear either of you. I'm going to reload myself.
Okay. This is like pretty par for the course for the last couple of episodes. We've just been like, I don't know what happened. We were in a nice streak of like everything was going fine. And now they're just like, I feel like every day there's been like some new crazy tech mishap. We should talk though at some point. Like I know you called me this week and we missed each other.
No, I know.
But what's happening in content moderation land?
I think the stuff you saw this morning that Facebook has decided that wondering whether Antifa might be starting all of the wildfires is not a go anymore.
Wait, hold on. Wait 1 second. You have to back up. Like, wait, Antifa's starting that's a thing that's going around?
Been pretty widely alleged, yes. And by widely alleged, I mean dipshits on Facebook, but nonetheless, that is widely alleged at this point. So, and actually what was happening in Oregon is local police were getting, like, basically having to divert resources because you actually had armed gangs stopping cars, looking for, I guess people wearing black hoods or however the hell one identifies Antifa. The idea was that, and so like kind of this devolution to kind of weird armed checkpoints. And goodbye again, Ben. And so Facebook actually decided based on that talking about Antifa starting wildfires, which has been, the police have said there is no evidence of that, even if some of these things likely did result from arson, is now verboten on the platform. So we can add that to the list of things that are officially unallowed, including like saying that masks don't help prevent COVID, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Like, do you, I don't know that we've had this conversation, which is just kind of like, do you think that like Facebook should be doing like this type of like truth telling or like sussing out this type of thing? And, I know that you broke that really great India story a couple weeks back. We should talk about that too. But what are your thoughts?
I don't see how you do a distributed content system in which you are algorithmically choosing what posts are in people's feed and not regulate the living hell out of it. If you want to allow it, so
regulate. Hold on. What do you mean by regulate? Like how? Like
I mean moderate.
moderate. Okay, sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
Wanted to have a system where like everyone's page is just their page, like basically Facebook circa 2006. And you can go and look at everyone's else's content. I mean, at that point, yeah, it's it seems it's basically just the old internet, right? But if you're going to be taking the most successful posts and distributing them far and wide, which is the way it works, like then yeah, I think at that point you have to. Otherwise, crazy crap takes over discussion. And I mean, I think like at this point, it's pretty well established that if you don't do that, or even if you're slow in doing it, very bad things happen. Whether it's going to be, I think I can probably go on record and say QAnon is an unfortunate trend in politics. But
Ben, you're silent. But he does have he is speaking through his T-shirt.
He'll be back. Yeah,
he'll be back.
Absolutely.
Ben.
Yeah.
I'm being silenced.
Yeah. Well, it's a form of moderation, Kate.
It is a form of moderation. I just like waved some smoke over this entire crowdcast. Like we're just like can't communicate to each other. But yeah, no, go ahead.
So yeah, I don't see how you could possibly avoid it and not have terrible things happening. But again, it's not the way it has to be, right? There's a way to allow everyone to post whatever they want.
I can talk.
Hey,
there we go.
You know the old joke about that, right?
No.
You don't know the old "I can talk" joke?
No.
So a woman's sitting around at home, and her phone rings. She picks it up and she says, hello. And a voice says, I can talk.
That's
so
creepy.
She hangs up. It's kind of creepy. So she hangs up. And a few minutes later, the phone rings again. And she answers it and she says, hello. And the voice says, I can talk. And she's like, why are you telling me this? And she hangs up. The phone rings a third time, and the voice says, I can talk. And she says, what's the big deal? You can talk. I can talk. Everyone can talk. And the voice says, I'm a cow. There you go.
Sorry.
It just came to mind because it's the first time I've had the occasion to say in front of a live audience.
Heard that joke.
It's a dumb joke, but there you go.
Yeah.
It didn't even crack a smile from Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff was like...
I was trying to be polite. Not a little.
Yeah. Anyway, so here's my question. What, in an objective sense, leaving aside execution purposes, what should be the standard if you are, in fact, backed into the role of arbiters of truth, and you may be Mark Zuckerberg and they're kicking and screaming and insisting you don't want to be the arbiter of truth. But as you're saying, if you're going to play the role that they're playing, inevitably you're going to regulate. They're not going to take down every false statement. They're not going to take down every false and malicious statement. So what is the reasonable actual standard if you were zero basing it and saying, what should Facebook be responsible for taking down?
I think that this is an awkward thing for the company because the answer generally is everything that is threatening, libelous, in violation of their standards on pornography, nudity, harassment. Basically, if you couldn't put it in a newspaper, it arguably shouldn't be going on Facebook.
But what their standard is and what their standard should be are maybe very different questions. Because I don't think there's a lot of people out there who are satisfied with what their standard is. And yet when you talk to 100 different people about what they object to about their current standards, you don't get 100 different answers, but you probably get 6 or 7 radically different answers, where conservatives are concerned
Yeah.
that conservative speech is disproportionately suppressed. Liberals are concerned that there's not enough policing of certain types of abuse and too much policing of other types of abuse. I mean, nobody seems to have there doesn't seem to be kind of any neutral principle associated. We all think they should be doing more, but we don't agree about what they should be doing.
The funny thing, editorial content curation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the same thing can be said of the Wall Street Journal.
Not really, though.
Or of the Wall Street Journal op-ed page. I mean, obviously,
not really though either.
I don't know. People have very different agreements about very different opinions of these things.
But there's a choking point at those in a gatekeeper function that those papers have, which they have employed people and they have control over kind of some of the editorial content and some of the fact checking and I hate to be this person, but issues of scale are super real. And
yeah.
So this is, and Jeff, you and I have talked about this for a long time. I think that there are really hard issues of scale, but to your point, and one of the points that I think a lot of people make is well, then maybe Facebook shouldn't be in the business of doing a newsfeed or something like that. And but how do you walk back that technology?
It's quite popular and does produce entertaining content, and people vote with their feet, and they have voted for it overwhelmingly. But I mean, I think your description of the Wall Street Journal is in some ways a choke point is a fair description, right? I mean, we are a bunch of self-appointed reasonable people associated with a venerable institution, and we get paid money not to screw up.
It's not just you. It's all of the major ones, and people shit all over them all the time. No offense, but yeah.
Because there are plenty of disagreements one can have about what screwing up looks like. But I don't know that there's an objective thing. I just see. I mean, I don't think that there's any way you're going to. The problem is the platform does have to ascribe to some high level of neutrality, and the problem is the content curation is not neutral. It cannot be, right? And that's
no.
So I think that you end up in a lot of trouble on that front, and I think that Facebook does have to sort of simultaneously espouse and attempt to enact multiple conflicting values. And of course, that's going to mean that whenever anyone's poking really hard on one side or the other, you're going to see them failing to do that.
But maybe the answer is that we shouldn't have any sympathy with that because they're engaged in something that is inherently contradictory. And so when they get tripped over the contradiction, the Wall Street Journal doesn't have this problem. The Wall Street Journal defines very clearly what its rules are, and it's an interesting example because its rules are radically bifurcated between the news side and the op-ed page. The op-ed page takes the view that it is the vanguard of the conservative movement, and it doesn't say this out loud, but that it will publish all kinds of tendentious nonsense in the service of that. And the news side takes the view that it is a very different type of conservative, but aggressive, but very careful news outlet that publishes things that are true and reliable and needs to be a voice of care and authority. And the result is that both the editorial page and the news side have a very clear set of rules about who you're not allowed to be and still write for them. Or at least what you're not allowed to do in the course of writing for them. And Facebook doesn't have that kind of rule set. And I think there's a, you know, like if you're going to be in that business, you gotta pick a rule set, and if the rule set is gonna be we're the biggest of big tents, then maybe stop pretending you have community standards.
I just want to say really quickly that to put some like context into what you're saying, Ben, which I think is super helpful, you're kind of casting the Wall Street Journal and all other kind of news organizations as ex ante like content moderators. Before something goes up online or before something gets published, they're doing content moderation before it even shows up from their writers and their reporters, right? They are doing it on that side of things, and those are their community standards. Whereas Facebook is doing that to some extent, vis-a-vis like algorithmic photo DNA takedown of like automatic takedown of certain types of things that are like terrorism or child pornography. But mostly things go up until post hoc content moderation, something gets flagged and they look at it again. And so that's very different beast than like the one that like the Wall Street Journal models itself on. I just wanted to like point out that structural difference.
No, that's absolutely right. But let's just take a very granular example, which is if I decide today I want to be a columnist at the Wall Street Journal, I can't. And
True.
I cannot do that. And I can ask to do it. But there is a set of gateway determinations that are designed to make sure that they decide who gets to be a columnist at the Wall Street Journal. And unless you're meet a certain set of criteria or fall into a certain set of buckets of exceptions to those criteria, the answer is generally no. And by the way, I think that's perfectly appropriate. On the other hand, if I decide that I want to be a columnist on Facebook, the answer is presumptively yes.
But that's for the entire internet.
Yes, except that the entire internet doesn't hold itself out as defending certain community standards. And and if I, in the course of doing that, I am the permission design is I'm allowed to do anything I want except things that violate very specific community standards. Whereas the permission system at the Wall Street Journal is you're not allowed to do anything unless we let you. And so it's a presumptive positive as opposed to a presumptive negative.
Yeah, and Facebook's model is, one, a better business, flatly. There's no question about it. And two, has a lot of merits. It's, good to let people talk to each other. I mean, I think connecting people in general, right, which is the stated purpose, it's hard to argue with that as a value. But I think that, the thing that we're kind of circling around again is newsfeed and the recommendation systems, as those are editorial, but without the same before the fact screens built in. And
so there's this interesting, so here's like this recent content moderation problem or issue that I had not, that is like about downranking, which is the terminology for when something is basically like shuttled into the other term for it is like shadow banning. Like it's not taken off like the internet, just like not put into the news feed. Like people just don't get recommended a certain post or a certain person because of like the algorithm for whatever reason. So during a particular point in time when there was a lot of discussion happening around Sesta Fosta, which is the Stop Enabling Sex Trafficking Act, and I forget what FOSTA stands for, but anyways, it ended up passing, and it was an amendment to Section 230. And it was widely heralded as being bad for sex workers and bad for independent sex workers and people who wanted to do this and saw this as a very kind of like a progressive libertarian cause. And I followed a bunch of sex workers during that time that were very vocal on, like, this is on Twitter, very vocal about this type of thing. And I'd since forgotten about them, and and it was funny, how I'd since forgotten about them because they had just stopped appearing and they never really appeared in my feed. They put regularly, Twitter regularly allows full genital pornography to be streamed on its platform. They just hide it from you. And I kind of for some reason, somebody said something and it took me to another page, and then all of a sudden I found myself on this pro sex workers site, or that was on Twitter, and I was full of pornography, and I was and it said I followed her, and I was I've literally never seen any of the things that she's posted in my feed, literally none of them. And I didn't hide any of them. There was never a moment which I was oh no, this isn't something I want to see. I mean, I don't really want to see it on a daily basis, right? But I kind of had I did this mental calculation of wow, there definitely must be something happening at Twitter in which they can make this moral stand of allowing all of this stuff to stay up and have this kind of everything goes, content neutrality, and then they just downranks it all.
Now you know how conservatives feel, Kate.
Yeah, right. I wasn't silenced, but yeah, go ahead.
On Facebook, there is a interesting system that probably... it's come up a bit in the India reporting we've done recently. By the way, I've got to say that your fans of In Lieu of show do not like the Wall Street Journal based on the both either the op-ed or the news page based on comments, but that is entirely okay.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been following it because I've been trying to prevent myself from being muted by the tech. What are people's grievances with the Wall Street Journal?
Apparently, we are both right-wing in our news operation and also do not do original reporting, which I will try not to take any offense at. But oh well.
Yours original reporting is some of the most original reporting.
Well, yeah, so to all people in the comments who say the Wall Street Journal does not do original reporting, there are matters of fact in life, and that is one that is false. The Wall Street Journal does an enormous amount of original reporting, including in areas that other media don't touch a whole lot. There's a reason why if you are in business of any sort, that is probably your main page or your main one of your principal news outlets. It, I think, is still the largest circulation daily in the United States. Is that, or is USA Today?
I think the Times not do the Journal?
I thought you guys were.
Okay.
I thought that the Times was still 3.
Okay.
But anyway, the Wall Street Journal breaks all kinds of news all the time and does original reporting all the time.
I'll get off my institutional loyalty there, though, and go back to what I was saying. It's come up in the India stuff, which is that I don't think it's appreciated to what degree there is a separate content moderation system for people who are high profile versus regular.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, I've seen this happens in the U.S. This certainly happens in India. But basically, I mean,
talk about India for a second, because I love this story that you wrote, and I think that it was really great.
So I mean, so this is. So let's start with this bit, because I think it's. I mean, and I believe blue check marks on Facebook. You guys, I don't know.
The blue check marks are garbage.
Okay.
That's always what.
I have them. I have one.
So if you have a blue check mark, that gives you some privileges. Namely, if you wish to do something that is going to get flagged as for content moderation, and you have a blue check mark and a sizable following, you, sir, are likely protected initially. Your account is shielded, is the internal phrase, right? And so it's not to say that your stuff won't come down. It's just saying that there is an extra level of review that's going to go into it. Because the last thing they want to do is take down somebody who is in a position to bitch with a platform. And they don't want to let you back on there and have a lot of followers, or, I mean, God knows that being dragged in lieu of fun, could really be damaging to major platforms.
Well, you know what happened to Kate the other day.
Exactly. And that is an interesting one, right? That's like, I'm not sure if Twitter doesn't have that system, or
they all have that system. It's called like the trusted sources system.
Yeah. So it's not to say that you can't get taken down. It's if you are, say, threatening to kill someone in your kitchen, which I believe you were, but
on in lieu of fun, no less.
I did.
So done.
It wasn't even me. It was Molly.
She was quoting Molly Jong Fast.
I didn't.
Lovingly poking her husband.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So okay. So on the India stuff, the India stuff comes down to, and it's kind of a related issue here, right? Which is, namely, you don't want to upset people in a particular position. The reporting we did found that Facebook had intervened to prevent Indian politicians who were straight up inciting violence. That was Facebook's determination, from being banned from the platform. And inciting violence in India is, I mean, there are regular lynchings. And, there were killings in Delhi, there were riots in Delhi that killed 50 people, mostly Muslims, earlier this year. There are sporadic lynchings. Bluntly, some of them are absolutely findable on Facebook in detail. And the allegation was that Facebook had failed to enforce its content moderation and community standards rules because they were worried about pissing off the BJP, which is India's ruling party, the party of Narendra Modi. This was somewhat controversial for obvious reasons. And I think there's, particularly given Facebook's pledges to not let Myanmar happen again. And by that, I mean, not let the platform be used to incite genocidal behavior. The unwillingness to stand up for their own community standards principles, which was perceived by a whole bunch of people, including a lot of Facebook employees, was really concerning. So, and that's, we've, also found that they have cut breaks for the BJP in relation to election integrity stuff, both takedowns and ad policy violations, which, this is stuff that was a year. They let it stand for a year. So it's kind of, and there was obvious, it applies to the U.S. as well here, because if there is one party that has a certain level of dominance, per some of the folks we've talked to inside Facebook, they will receive the benefit of the doubt, sometimes even in instances when there isn't really any doubt. And that's something to think about when the platform discusses its neutrality. It's kind of realpolitik, right? Is that Facebook is not in a position where it wants to piss off a government that has the ability to significantly mess with their operations in major markets.
Yeah, but this was happening. That happened. It's like an interesting back and forth, Jeff, because like this has been happening in major markets for a long time. India is one of the biggest now. And so like Facebook's stranglehold in India actually ends up having like, it's like it both does not want to get shut off or like banned by the government, but also like the government banning Facebook would be hugely, hugely controversial, and like people would be very upset. And so like we should talk about this like at a different point in time, but like I think this is a fascinating story of very much what you said, which is kind of this idea that these companies and these governments are playing this game of chicken about like who's going to censor who and who's going to let who do business. And then like pretty much congenitally, the people who get screwed are users who get censored or like have.
But the biggest threat isn't that they ban Facebook, right? The biggest threat is that they arrest Facebook people in India, right?
Oh no, it's that they ban Facebook. Go ahead, Jeff.
Ben,
It's like
that
the
is
internet.
We should discuss this question in a couple of weeks. Is all I can say. But both of them are threats, right? You have operations in country. That is a threat. I mean, it's happened in Brazil, right? Facebook executives have been arrested in Brazil. But in terms of an actual ban, yeah, I mean, TikTok. I mean, the funny thing is that I think this is perhaps a bit of a colonial mindset. We assume that Facebook, the most important regulators, are going to be in the US and the EU. There's a decent case to be made that the most important regulators.
That's only for the next few years.
And I mean,
yeah.
If you look at TikTok, TikTok had 300 million Indian users. They're banned. They were banned after, a weird border skirmish in which people were, there were deaths on both sides and it was ugly and brutal. But that just happened. And yeah, I mean, absolutely Facebook is more baked in and WhatsApp is vastly even more baked in. But that is a, continued viability in that market is an issue.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go to some questions. Our first question comes from Fubar, who cannot come on the screen because her or his, I'm not sure which, webcam and mic do not work. But Fubar asks, what are the facts on the bee colony collapse? How close are we to losing our food supply?
We're not close to it. Good news here. This is actually, I may one of these days write an A-head for the Wall Street Journal. Those are like kind of the interesting but somewhat lighthearted things.
I love those.
Beekeeping, yes, bees have taken a hit for a few reasons. There are varroa, which are mites that basically hopped over from Europe in the 80s or so, 70s, 80s. They were had been basically kept out of the U.S. by a century-long ban on the importation of bees from overseas. But they finally made it in, and the bee genetics in the U.S., honeybees, we have maybe there were 7 to 10 lines of genetics. So we had some pretty deeply inbred bees. They weren't very good with dealing with the mites. They just destroyed them. There's also pesticide issues, overall insect collapse. Bees also have been hit by the tobacco ring spot virus in some places, which is the first virus to jump, known virus that we are aware of, to jump from a plant, aka tobacco, to an animal.
Huh.
But that said, losses are a lot higher every year. People are losing 30-40% of their hives. But the thing is with bees is they're pretty easy to split. And like if I want to, I can double the number of hives I have easily over the course of a year. So the number of hives is not actually declining. In fact, there's a case to be made that in major urban areas, East Bay, Oakland, California, where I'm at, we probably have far too many honeybees net. And in fact, to the point that we are out competing a whole bunch of in California, like literally 10,000 or so species of wild solitary bees. Because my backyard contains several armies, in bee number, right? Whereas like bumblebees, which are not solitary, but they're much smaller colonies, you can kind of outcompete them. So bees are just fine, but bees are like environmentally not necessary. They're necessary for monoculture agriculture. Like 10,000 acres of almonds in the Central Valley, not doable without bees, period. Like you just can't without honeybees in particular. But like an actual reasonable, a balanced ecosystem, generally fine without bees. Anyhow.
Interesting. So Neil Malcolm asks, is the bee's knees? Discuss the saying. What do we know about it?
I can't help you there, Paul.
I don't know either. I think it's just like a cute saying. I don't know the etymology of the bee's knees.
I think we're going to have to look into that. I will assign one of my researchers to it, and we will report back. Tony Cava, the floor is yours.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, right.
Now
you're
you're
not anymore.
unmuted.
You're good.
Now I'm unmuted. Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm not sure where in Oakland you are, but I spent my last year in the Bay Area, just below the Claremont Hotel. It's
Temescal
kind of
Center.
the anti-Oakland. Yeah. The Claremont is not really Oakland, but they call it that.
Pretty close. A mile off from me. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so I've got a bee question and a content question. So which would you prefer, since you're the
I
guest?
mean, hit them up. I got time.
Okay.
Do them both.
Okay, I will do that. First is the content question. It seems like the Soviet Union and then later the Russians had a lot of luck kind of pulling the wool over the eyes of old line media. For example, the New York Times and the Washington Post kind of getting sucked into active measures. And I'm wondering, are people like Mark Zuckerberg or Jack aware of that? Are they aware that they are being played, or there's people attempting to play them?
Hmm.
Or is it like kind of like through hubris that they're just kind of blind to it?
Oh, I think Russia Facebook is very well geared to addressing that. I mean, I think that some of the things that happened in 2016, in my mind, it's almost hard to think about them as being anything other than intended to embarrass Facebook. I mean, buying ads in rubles, that was like,
Yeah.
in some ways that was a joke on Facebook more than anything else, as best I can tell, because I'm pretty sure those guys had at least one credit card, US credit card, among them. But baking in an Easter egg, right? So I think that there's a great amount of attention on that. And I mean, if you look at sort of the enforcement they're doing related to Russian stuff, even though we are all very focused on it, like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Journal all covered a recent bust in which 13 accounts, 2 pages, and a total of 15,000 or fewer followers, plus one extremely crappy Romanian website, got taken down. Like, that was like major news. The Post and the Times both alerted it. And like, bluntly, I've seen worse things associated with middle school bullying on the platform than that. So I think that perhaps there is a bit of paranoia that's sunk in on some of that stuff. I mean, that perhaps we learned the lessons of 2016 a little bit too well. But yeah, definitely there's concern. I think the platform is on foreign interference. In some ways, that's the most straightforward and clear cut thing for Facebook to deal with. It's the domestic stuff, right? What do you do with people who are behaving literally exactly the same way as the Russians were in 2016, but like they're based out of Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm.
And on that one, Facebook is having that's just kind of an unaddressed question.
Well, they're just like, it like goes to the thing that is like the drum I beat all the time, which is just like that in an age of VPNs and everything else, like on the internet, geography is not particularly useful to you at all anymore as like a way of sorting out bad actors or like suspicious actors.
No, but it's very clear cut, right? And Facebook always says they go after the speaker, not the speech in these instances, right? But I mean, that's kind of like, at some point, that kind of like, well, if the speech is ultimately the harmful thing, then that seems a little bit,
Yeah.
They don't have an easy job.
Totally.
Right. Right.
But what was your B question, Tony?
Oh, the B question is, so I live up in Bellingham, Washington, which is about 10 miles from Blaine, where they found a live murder hornet about a month ago. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what is the deal with murder hornets and honeybees? How concerned should we be, and what can we do?
I think we had a lengthy discussion of the murder hornet.
We did. Yeah.
So there is archival.
I missed it. I wasn't there.
I mean, murder hornets have been branded incredibly. That was like some extremely good branding.
Not for the murder hornets.
Yeah, nasty. I mean, they will raid beehives and they will just basically bite the heads off of bees and then take them back to feed their young. And they are like pretty gigantic hornets, so that seems pretty unpleasant. And apparently they're quite mean.
Very.
But kind of think it might be, we've been over the, sort of the Africanized bees, like how that was going to kill everyone. And it's true, like there are species of bees that are, or that are very, very nasty and ultra defensive, and you don't want to get their genetics out of them. But like the whole like sort of 1990s, 1980s, like, oh God, Africanized bees. Like,
I remember that so well from
never
elementary
happened.
school.
Right.
Killer
Like, yeah,
bees.
we were going to be regularly getting attacked.
From John
So I guess
Belushi.
Yeah, but here's the question. Was the Africanized bee thing racist?
I mean, kind of a little
again,
bit.
the branding, it's true.
Yeah.
There are absolutely, like, the genetic origins of that particular strain of honeybee was African. They are very good, I believe South African. They are really good honey producers. They're just mean as hell. And when I say mean, I mean really defensive, but like, they will, like, unlike other bees, which, regular sort of the European, Italian, or even Russian honeybees that are kind of pretty standard here, they will be far more aggressive. They will just keep on stinging things. And so it's true. That said, like, yeah, it's hard to think that the phrase Africanized didn't carry some weight,
I mean, I feel like we do this with like any type of like random foreign, like we could have called it the Russian
The
honeybee.
Wuhan virus.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is yeah, like, but maybe like in the 80s and 90s, that was the bigger threat was Africa. Now it would be like the Norway hornets. It's going to bring you like socialized medicine. And like, sorry. Okay.
All right. So before we let Daniel ask his question, I have to ask Daniel a question. Because this is like the 20th day in a row that you have had a question wearing a black shirt against this black chair background. And so my question is this your in lieu of fun uniform, or do you just try to blend into that chair all the time?
I think it's oddly coincidental. It hasn't been purposeful at all, although now that you mention it, I wonder whether I should make it purposeful.
Keep being camouflaged.
I think it's like Daniel's like perfect camouflage against his chair, which does have this sort of enveloping sweep, like the chair is like could eat him. Is like I keep waiting for you to show up in like, white stripes or something, but no, here you are, black on black again. The floor is yours, sir.
So moving away from the bee questions into a totally different realm is, how do you think journalism has changed since Trump's election, or has it largely stayed the same? And I'm leaving that question rather broad, so you can take it in a number of different directions.
Yeah.
Good question.
So I covered politics before I came to the Journal. And I basically was on the AP's investigative team and was assigned to the Donald Trump campaign in the early summer of 2015. And that was the end of that. So until I joined the Journal last year was all I did pretty much. And I think that we still have a really hard time. So I guess I'm talking more about the political stuff here. I think we still have a really hard time adapting to the way the office is being used is different than the way the office has been used in the past. And I think there's, the gig, like the president said that, like at this point seems like it's gotten to be a bit, we're still sort of adhering to the rules that if the president said it, it probably is going to happen, right? If the president is, banning, anyone who's transgender in the military, if there's if the president bans TikTok, then TikTok is definitely getting banned, right? And I don't know that those things can be assumed at this point. So I think that there's kind of an element of getting played over and over that might happen with some of that, right? I think it's very hard to figure out how to, while being totally neutral, approach these things in a way that doesn't lead to you getting played. But Kate, you muted yourself. Kate, you muted yourself. Okay.
I have unmuted Kate.
Thank you. No, I think, sorry, there was like a helicopter or something going over. I mean, I think that's right. I just think that, like, in general, that I think that Daniel's question is like the way that we assess all like political norms, not just in journalism, but just like in hearing about anything. Like now we have a much more direct, I mean, the president literally just tweets out stuff that's like an like unfiltered relationship between the populace and the president, in which he gets to like just like spew stuff at people. Of course it gets spin, of course it gets taken up, but like it's just kind of crazy like how the norms around him even like tweeting have changed, I feel like, in the last couple of years. Or do you disagree?
No, I mean, I generally think that, I mean, Facebook and Twitter have many good uses, and one of them is it does allow people to directly communicate with the people who want to hear from them. And so part of me is like, why are we reporting on tweets when presumably the people who are going to be most interested in the tweets will have already been getting the tweets?
The tweets information. Yeah, no, I think that's right.
So I think there's that, but I also think, sort of going back to the question, that one of the other things that's changed, and this has been a long, I wish I could say it was a slow slide, but a long and fast slide. The fewer reporters there are, and the more hollowed out local journalism gets, which has sort of continued unabated. I mean, the Journal, the New York Times, the Post, these institutions are actually doing just fine, but it is, unfortunately, I wish I could even say it's zero sum. We're doing okay. Everyone small is not. And so I think you're also seeing an increasingly narrowed focus, right? Because the places that would previously produce news stories that bigger outlets would then go and, you know, depending on how you want to phrase it, either amplify or rip off, you know, but at least it would provide a little more diversity. Mm-hmm. You're not getting that production. So at this point, basically you have social media that is providing cues and government that is providing cues, rather than a whole bunch of local news outlets that are providing cues. And so I think there's a bit of narrowing of vision that comes with that. I don't know.
No, it's a good point. No, I think it's well said. Ben, we have to wrap up soon, but do you want one last word? I don't know. I like, as a person who runs a small journalistic enterprise, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are.
I almost completely agree with that. I mean, we are protected from it because we're not a for-profit, and we function explicitly outside the marketplace, and so we're protected from it. But I think about all of the small places that I kind of grew up writing for. A bunch of them are gone. The ones that aren't are a shadow of their former selves. And that's true of local press. It's true of trade press. And it's true of kind of insurgent ideological organs. And so I do think, I do agree with that. I think if you don't have, there used to be a real place for free publications that were ad driven. Craigslist has evaporated that market. There used to be a place for very expensive subscription models that didn't rely on advertising. That was the publication I grew up in. Legal Times was, I think it cost $1,200 a year.
You used to write Legal Times?
I did.
Keep going, yeah.
And it was true of, places like the New Republic, which were which were never money making, but were sort of philanthropic gestures of rich people. That latter model is still available, though it's a little bit more complicated than it used to be. And so I basically think, yeah, all of us who are trying to create spaces are figuring out how to fund it as we go, and those are, sometimes you can find a niche that will fund for a period of time. Sometimes you can do it over longer periods of time, but nobody has cracked it yet. As a at least on a as a model matter that is replicatable by others on a general scale.
I would that makes sense to me. I would say though that at least in my own career, I've concluded that nobody's cracked it yet as an overly optimistic phrasing, in that it implies that there is some viable way
to crack it,
to do this. I mean, I think that, the sort of stuff that I like to think of myself primarily as doing, which is investigative enterprise, does not pay for itself as a matter of course.
Yeah.
No, that's clearly right. And let's be frank about the traditional business model of newspapers, because it was
a glamour.
Look,
it was a local monopoly combined with publisher ego about winning awards and being a big man in the community.
And also, so yeah, I think monopoly distribution mechanisms combined with like three critical legs of the stool. One was local food stores and their need to distribute coupons. And that would occupy the middle of most newspapers every weekend, would be the coupon collection from, and those were, tens and tens of thousands of dollars a week. The other big one was local department stores. Before the Victoria's Secret catalog, that was the principal mechanism by which women's underwear was sold, or at least advertised. And those were the center pages of every major mid-sized daily just about every day. And then when
and real estate.
Yes, real estate classifieds was the third leg. And there is no need for any of those things to rely on a wad of paper being thrown at people's doors anymore. And so I don't know if you're right or wrong that there is no model to crack. But I do think it is, we've been struggling with this problem for 30 years now, and nobody's created the perfect cracking model for it.
We have. What do you say? What do you say, Jeff?
I was just going to say, I've the number of every publication I've ever worked at, there's been sort of this plan for when digital revenue was going to replace print revenue. And we're finally getting there, but that's only because the print revenue has just suicided over and over and over again. So at this point, it's like, yeah, at that point, like,
yeah.
I
was going, this has been kind of a fascinating, sprawling conversation from bees to the future of print and digital media.
The future of print bees.
Yeah, the print bees. Yes, it's true. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being my mystery guest. Please stay safe in Oakland with the fires. I know things are really crazy right now.
Oh, I'm going to retreat back to a bedroom with an air purifier in it now.
Good.
For basically the next 24 hours. Then it might be clearing up, but thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Geez. 2020, you. This has been I'm so tired. I don't know if I can handle any more news for this year. I hear there's some big stuff coming up in the next 2 months though. So I should probably
no.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Ben, who do we have for tomorrow?
We have, speaking of journalists, we have Mike Isikoff, who's coming on to talk about his new season of Conspiracy Land, which is only 3 episodes. So if you want to binge listen to it between today and tomorrow to grill Mike with the tough questions, I'm sure he would appreciate that.
You got to ask him questions about bees.
Yeah, we're going to ask him only questions about bees. We'll really flummox him.
You ask him about me. You're the best. Thank you so much for coming on. And Ben, what do we say?
We don't have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we have bees that do content moderation. And they sit there on the keys, and because they're communal insects, they're not big enough to press more than one key. They just jump on their specific key, and the other bees jump on their keys, and then the murder hornets fly in and steal bees away and feed them to their babies. And that is why you
shouldn't do drugs, kids.
That is why you sometimes get content moderation notices from Facebook without the letter G or H. It's because that bee has been stolen away by the murder hornets and fed to their babies.
Great. Cool.
We will see you tomorrow.
Bye, guys. Bye, Jeff.